Hey everyone, this is Bob McIntosh from MassHire Lowell Career Center. I have today with me Tejal Bagadia. I hope I pronounced that right, Tejal. she's gonna, huh?
It's Bagadia.
Bagadia? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
No,
we're gonna, she's going to talk about the life of a recruiter. It was titled The Secret Life of a Recruiter, but I don't think the life of a recruiter is that secret. Do you, Tejal?
I don't think so. I feel like there is enough of us that are talking about it that it shouldn't be a secret anymore.
That's
It used
right.
to be.
That's right. And so one of the things you're going to see on Tejal's LinkedIn profile is that she talks about, you know, how one should search for jobs, and you know, from a recruiter's point of view, which I think is really valuable, because you know, I as a career coach don't know what it's like to be a recruiter. So any kind of information that she can impart, you know, to us job coaches, I think is awesome. And so I'm going to just let you read through her bio. And what I really like about her bio is that she wrote it from first person point of view. So, you know, I ask my guest speakers to present a bio, and usually it's in third person point of view. But I think that's a bit stuffy. Don't you, Tejal? Don't you think that's a bit stuffy?
I agree. I've always wanted my bio to be in first person because it just I'm talking about myself, right? And whether like I got help with a copywriter to help me write it, which I did. Katrina Kibben actually helped me write my bio.
Really?
Yeah. The first part of it is yes. But like we wrote it as if I were talking.
Okay.
And it like one of the things I liked about it is because it portrayed my voice.
Right.
And it wasn't Katrina's voice, it was my voice.
Right. So, you know, in the second paragraph, she mentions how she was one of LinkedIn's top voices. Which year was that?
2020, the beginning
2020?
of pandemic.
Okay. And I was speaking to her yesterday, and she says she has a little bit of the imposter syndrome. Is that true?
Oh, I have a lot bit of the imposter syndrome.
Right. So there were some people in the audience who saw my last guest speaker talk about imposter syndrome, and it was awesome. Now I got a question for you, and that is, what is this about? What you have this in your headline on your profile. What are you saying here?
So I am a huge nerd. If there is a nerdy topic, I probably know about it, and I probably have spoken about it. So I look at Samwise Gamgee is essentially the guide, more than even Gandalf, to Frodo. When Frodo needed to take the ring to Mount Doom. So without Samwise, Frodo probably would not have gotten to Mount Doom, in my opinion. I feel like that's most people's opinion. So I like to look at myself as
first of all, which one is Samwise? Because I'm not a Hobbit fan.
So the one with the blonde hair is Samwise, and the one with the brown hair is Frodo. Yeah.
Would anyone raise their hand if they know the Hobbit and who Samwise is? Okay, Wayne, good. Peter, Neil, Mike, Michelle. Okay, Michael. Sorry about this. Oh, Ann. Okay, all right. So can you know, I can see the audience raise their hand. Can you see that?
I can't see any of that, no.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, so let's go forward, because Tejal has a lot to talk about. But first, we're going to have a poll, because those of you who've been to my webinars and seen my guest speakers know that I love my polls. So the question is have you worked with a recruiter? And I know there's a special guest out there who is a recruiter. So Ed, you can raise your hand if you can participate in the poll if you want.
Hi, Ed. I know Ed.
Yeah, you know Ed Han, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, someone wrote a decade ago. Okay, so the poll is really really speeding along. Very good, very good. Okay, I'm going to end it in say 5 seconds. Okay, here we go. So very good. So let me share with you the results. Tejal, here you go. So 52% have worked with recruiters and 39% no. But 9% say no, but they think they should. I just wanted to get a sense of how many of you out in the audience, know a little bit about recruiters. All right. So does that surprise you, Tejal?
That most people have worked with a recruiter? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it does not.
Okay. All right. So let's go on with the questions. And so the first question is, or rather, please tell us how you got into recruiting.
Oh, that's a great question. So my beginning was I was in college, working on my bachelor's degree in human resources, and I was looking for an administrative assistant job at that time. The company that I interviewed with realistically needed an HR specialist. So that's
Okay.
what I ended up being hired as, a young 21-year-old with no experience in any of it. Thankfully, I was able to be in a smaller environment where I learned a lot. The entire gamut of being an HR, like realistically, I'm an HR generalist. I did staffing, I did payroll, I did all of the other stuff. And beyond that, after that job ended, because they were going under, I finished my degree, moved to Arizona. I knew from that job that I really enjoyed recruiting and staffing. So when I moved to Arizona, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for jobs that had recruiting roles open. And I ended up interviewing at Robert Half as a candidate and got hired as an employee, as an internal recruiter, and haven't really looked back since.
So you didn't want to pursue HR though? Do you
No,
find recruiting more exciting?
I do. HR is a great field to be in. However, I was not a person that would sit there. What I did in HR was mostly benefits, payroll, like firing, writing people up, and none of that just was like, I'm like, I don't want to do any of this. Like, this is a job that needs to be done, but this is not where my soul is calling me. I just could not stand talking to one more person about how they were not meeting their performance.
Yeah, so so that would be a bummer if I feel it would be a bummer if I had to fire someone.
Yeah.
Did that cause sleepless nights on occasion?
Yeah, it did. It's never a good conversation to have. It's like, hey, like we need to let you go kind of deal. Like, you're not performing really well. There's like, we wrote you up. Like I've been laid off, so I know what it feels like to be laid off. And it's never like a good feeling, whether you are on the giving side or the receiving side. And it just is heartbreaking because there's nothing you can do as an HR person, and there's nothing they can do sometimes as the employee. The decision's already been made. So like, it's two people with their hands tied without any control of the situation, sitting there and being like, we need to do this. And I am a control freak, and I did not like that.
Control freak, okay. At least you admit that. My wife won't admit it. Okay. Very good. Okay, so here's the next question, and that is, what does the daily life of a recruiter look like?
Yeah. So every day is a little bit different, but most days I am either in meetings with my hiring managers or either talking to candidates and pushing them through, prepping candidates for their interviews coming up, answering questions from either hiring managers or candidates about various things, coordinating things, putting out fires. That's like on an average day.
So, I mean, do you spend a lot of time on the phone?
I do. I would say half of my day goes on the phone with the candidates.
Okay. And so when you're trying to reach someone, do you always get them, or do you sometimes, like, what's the percentage rate of, in general, how many times you would reach someone who you need to reach?
Yeah, I would say that typically I get, in the first outreach, I would say about 30% of people that I reach out to respond. On the second outreach, it goes up to like 55, 60%. On the third outreach, it's about like 70, 75%.
So to get this straight, you're trying to reach out to people who applied to your company, or you're trying to source them from another company?
Yeah, the stats that I just gave are sourcing candidates. If they've applied, then the statistics are much higher. Like if they've applied and I'm reaching out, like most of the time I get the candidate.
So, I mean, is it really as hard for you to find talent as it's purported? You know, what we read on LinkedIn or any other publications?
Yeah, I would say it is difficult. I would not say it's as hard in the recs that I'm sourcing on
Mhm.
as it is in some other ones. So I hire for product managers right now, but I would say that historically it's been in tech fields, it's been hard to find candidates and it's been hard to hire candidates. I would not say that it's as hard as people make
No.
it out to be,
Mhm.
but you know, that's my personal opinion, and maybe other recruiters will hit me on the head with a pool noodle when I say that, but like I think it's like about the outreach and it's about the approach rather than anything else.
So, well, I mean, I imagine it has to do with the company itself. I mean, where you work.
Mhm.
Can I mention the name, by the way?
Yeah. I work for Amazon.
Okay, so where you work at Amazon, that's got a great name. So that must make a difference, say, from a company that doesn't have such a great name.
I would say it's been the opposite.
Really?
Working for Amazon has getting candidates to work for Amazon and like
Mhm.
getting them interested has been more difficult than any other company in my life. And I've mostly worked for small to mid-sized organizations, and it was easier for me to recruit for small to mid-sized organization than it has been for Amazon, because with big name recognition also comes negative press, and like people have opinions about the company, and that's okay. That's
Mhm.
their opinion, it's valid, it's their perspective. So it's harder for people like me. It's like I have a great experience with the organization, and so I would say it's harder to recruit for Amazon than it has been for other organizations.
I mean, what I know about Amazon, I like Amazon, by the way, but what I
Yeah.
know about Amazon is that the organization, in terms of who they hire for recruitment, they're pretty fair. I mean,
Mhm.
would you say?
Yeah, in like I would say, in my opinion, we are
Mhm.
very objective in our hiring. You know, from what I've seen, it's more so let's look at it objectively and let's look at the candidate against the job description rather than comparing them to other candidates, which has been nice.
But okay, so what I'm referring to is the
Oh,
recruiters that they hire. Uh,
mm-hmm,
I mean, I think they like Dan Roth, for instance, and
mm-hmm.
Amy Miller, great people. Um, you know, I think, I think we can agree that Amazon has been very fair in terms of their hiring process in that regard. Now, tell us a little bit about the hiring process Amazon has in terms of, let's say, basic requirements. What does that mean?
Yeah. So Amazon is an OFCCP compliant company. And I want to caveat this. I'm not speaking for Amazon. I'm speaking as a recruiter that works at Amazon. This
Yeah.
is my. Um, Amazon is an OFCCP compliant company, which means we are bound by governmental laws. And when we put out job descriptions and we list basic requirements, that's the bare minimum requirements that a person needs to get this job done. They have to be objective. They have to be based around the job description and the work that the candidate is going to be doing. Everything else goes in the preferred qualification. So when we look at a candidate and we're hiring the candidate, they have to meet that basic qualifications. And because if we get audited, we could get in trouble.
And so if they don't, if say you require the person would have a bachelor's degree and they don't have a bachelor's degree, then there's no chance, right?
Likely not, no.
Likely not. Okay. So I got a question from someone in the audience, and the person asked, do you recruit for project managers? I think that's what you said, right?
No, so Amazon does not have project managers. We have product managers and we have program managers.
Hmm.
I would say our program managers are likely what other people think of as project managers. And there's two different skill set that Amazon thinks about, and each company kind of does it differently. Like this product titles I have like messed up in so many companies, because what we call product managers, Microsoft calls program managers.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like product managers are essentially people that are strategic and are pushing the product forward. Program managers are the more tactical, more technical, day-to-day kind of people.
Okay. And by the way, folks, if you have any questions, then just ask away. I will try to answer them as we go along, but please keep your questions brief, because I don't want to have to read through a lot of text, and in that way you'll probably get your questions answered. However, if you don't get your questions answered, please accept my apologies for that. Okay, you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope this doesn't seem like an interview for you, but what do you find most enjoyable about recruiting?
Oh, I would say getting candidates through the process and making offers. That like makes my day absolutely. I love giving the great news to candidates, and like so often I've heard the excitement in their voice, and like the disbelief that they got the offer in their voice, and it just makes my heart melt a little bit, because I'm like, I'm making somebody's day, right? And it's not not trying to be narcissistic, but it gives you a good feeling when you give somebody good news. And being able to see a candidate that was unemployed and pushing for that candidate and getting that candidate the offer, that like is just what I love about recruiting. The secondary thing I love about recruiting is the versatility of my job. Because some days I'm sourcing and just reaching out. So if I am having what I call an introvert day, where I don't want to talk to candidates, or I don't want to talk to anybody, and I just want to put in my headphones, listen to Indian music, and source away, I can do that. And some days I am an extrovert, and all I want to do is talk to people, and I'm bouncing off the walls, and I can do that too.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, do you know if you're an introvert or an extrovert?
I am an extreme extrovert.
Okay. All right. I would have pegged you for an extrovert. So Ed Hand wrote that that's the awesomeness, and I'm assuming that placing a candidate in a position is what he's talking about. So it's really it's a satisfaction you get, not monetarily, but the satisfaction of placing someone to make their life better. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like Ed and I have the similar, I don't mean to speak for Ed, but we've spoken about this, like we have a similar mentality of like guiding the candidates and not telling them what to do. And that's the biggest thing. Like we can, as a recruiter, I can talk a candidate into the job, but over the years, I've realized that talking the candidate into the job is not the right thing to do. Giving the candidate all of the information so they can make the right decision for themselves, whether it's your role or somebody else's role, is even more rewarding. And I have had candidates take somebody else's job. I'm like, nope, absolutely makes sense. They're paying you more, whatever XYZ may be. Like if anything changes, please don't hesitate to reach out. And they have come back 6 months later and said, hey, can we talk? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And they're like, yeah, if you would have pushed me to take the job offer, I probably wouldn't have been happy, but like, I'm glad that you didn't. And I'm like, I always tell my candidate, I'm like, I will give you all of the information I can so you can make the best decision for your life, because this is your job, your career, your paycheck. I don't get to make those decisions for you.
So where do you think that attitude in you comes from? Is it having been out of work yourself and understanding the struggles of finding work, or is it just who you are? I mean,
yeah, I think I've never been like a pushy salesperson. I don't like pushing people into doing things that they don't want to do. It feels very dirty to me. So when I had to do that, and when I was trained to do that, it just like didn't sit right with me ever. And once I got to the point where I was no longer in the agency, and even when I worked in an agency where this was no longer expected out of me, like it just helped me like be myself and like thrive as a recruiter, because like my boss and my employer was not pushing me to do the wrong thing by the candidate.
Okay. All right. So one person asked, he says, and thank you for the question, Josh. In recruiting for your project managers, okay, so not project managers, product or program managers, what do you look for as a standout? And I think this is really one of the questions that's coming up, but yeah, that's a great question. So what do you look as the standout in terms of who you would push forward for the role?
So I would, you know, in any role, and this is not just for the product managers, to push them forward would mean that they meet like the bare minimum qualifications that I'm looking for, whatever
Okay.
those bare minimum qualifications are, whether it's a bachelor's degree, whether it's 5 years of experience, whether it's, you know, when I hired engineers, whether they need to have .NET or C# or JavaScript or Vue, whatever it may be. If the candidate has that bare minimum requirement, I will push them forward in front of my hiring managers. And that is my philosophy that I tell my hiring managers. I'm like, I am not a person that will find you the 100% fit.
Oh, yeah.
Not the
No, I
person.
don't know anyone who could, actually, you know, but what
Yeah.
about personality? Do you look for a personality in a candidate?
Personality is very subjective for me. So I don't look at like whether they have a good personality or bad personality. I look at like, are they being an asshole or not? Excuse my French, but like I do the asshole test. Like, how
No,
are
actually,
they?
no, that's English.
Yeah.
So that's what I say, my English.
I look for more so like, are they going to be an asshole? How are they responding to the questions? How are they taking the questions? So that is more so like in terms of personality that I look for. Like if they are like just answering the questions and, you know, giving me the information that I want, I don't look for anything beyond that is subjective, that I would consider subjective. And I don't, when I talk to my hiring manager about candidates, I leave those things out because I'm like, that's not important. What is important is the candidate has the skill set and they can do the job. Unless the candidate is an asshole, then I'm like, maybe we need to do one more screen and like see whether this candidate was just an asshole to me, or like I was having a bad day and it invoked that in them, or like they were having a bad day. Things happen, right? So.
Okay, all right. So one person writes, so I thought you would be dressed as Elastigirl today. I guess you know who told that, who asked you that. Okay.
You know, the funny story about that costume is that it didn't quite fit right, so I had to take it off as soon as I took the picture.
Tell me about it. None of my clothes fit right. Okay, so who are the best types of bosses to work with?
The ones that don't have an ego.
Mm.
When I say that, I mean there are leaders out there and there are managers out there that have this insecurity and ego about themselves.
Yeah.
I've worked under these managers where if I try, like me being me and me being an assertive, outgoing, friendly personality has been threatening to them, and they have hindered my progress under them. So because their ego got hurt because the leaders, CTOs, VPs in smaller organizations would come to me and ask me questions to do things that realistically were out of bounds for me, instead of going to the manager.
Really?
And they got this ego that like, why are they coming to you? Why can't they just come to me? I'm like if a CTO comes,
like you're stepping on their toes.
yeah,
Almost.
yeah, a little bit intimidating, a little bit insecurity. Those are the worst kind of bosses to work for. The best kind of bosses to work for are bosses that understand that you want to hire people that are smarter and better than you, because those are the people that you will lead, coach, and push to the next level, that will make you look good. Because if your people are doing well and if your people are getting the recognition, that's a good look on you because you hired that person.
Oh, absolutely.
Or they are like, you know, they're like, you are their leader and clearly it looks good upon themselves. And that comes with like years of either working on yourself or like just not having that ego for yourself, or having that mentality that I am here to lead my people to do better than me, that they're smarter than me. So I would say the best types of bosses are non-egotistical and very secure in who they are.
So I forgot to mention that you're getting your master. Whoa, wait, hold on. You got your master's in organizational leadership today? Is that when you heard?
I heard last week.
Last week?
Yeah.
But you're having your ceremony today.
I'm having an award ceremony today. I am graduating next month.
Okay, good for you. Okay, so is that something that they taught you when you were earning your master's?
No. So
or is it
learning
just
my
something that you've experienced about egotistical bosses?
This is mostly based on my own experience about egotistical bosses. My master's degree was more theory about how leadership theories are formed.
Okay. All right. So one person asked, so if, you know, it may not be the case with Amazon because they have very strict rules in terms of basic requirements, but he wants to know, how can you get around those requirements? I mean, can you just get around them and get a job based on your transferable skills, or do you have to have all the requirements?
Yeah. So when you're looking at companies that don't have the basic requirement or preferred qualifications separated out, like must-haves and nice-to-haves, and especially this is especially true in smaller organization. Look for the words "or." So if they have bachelor's degree or few years of experience, transferable experience. If they have this or that, that is a good place for you to apply with your transferable skills, as long as you show your transferable skills onto your paper. Can you get around basic requirements? Typically, no. But there are companies that will hire people that have transferable skill set, and it depends on like the org, it depends on like what the team needs and all of that stuff. So it's not a, particularly if you get rejected from those roles that you're trying to get into, it's not a knock on you. It's more so what the team currently needs and what they have, like what they currently have on their team as far as skill set and what they need. It's a need-based decision rather than a you against you decision.
Okay. So I'm going to go to another question, and this sounds like the person is a little frustrated. And she writes, how do you get through all of the emails that recruiters send you and, you know, me, and, you know, basically how do you really, oh gosh, how do you pick the good recruiters from the bad ones? I guess that's what she's trying to ask.
Oh, so like most people that are in the job market, even people that are not in the job market, right? We are getting inundated with recruiters trying to recruit us. I get this as a recruiter every single day. I get 5 emails every day that people want to hire me. And typically, if you're looking for a job, if you are active or even exploring, it's very easy to ascertain whether a recruiter is good or not, or whether it's recruiter is decent or not, by the way they respond to your questions. Say, hey, I'm interested, here are my requirements, can you meet these requirements? Put requirements out in front of recruiters and see how they respond. Because if the candidate is like, I've had this happen, candidate's like, is this position remote? I'm not, like, if it's not remote, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, look, it's not remote, but here's another position that can be remote. So, you know, put requirements in front of recruiters and see how they respond, because if they cannot respond to your requirements, they're likely not going to be your advocate.
Okay, so essentially you have to have clear communications with the recruiters, as they should with you. Okay, so next question. What are the best types of candidates to work with?
It's like asking me who my favorite hiring manager is.
Yeah, I know. But I'm sure, I mean, I'm sure the audience really wants to know, so what can I do better? You know, how can I come across as the best candidate, not only experience-wise, but also perhaps personality-wise?
Yeah, I would say that as a recruiter, I love it, and especially as a woman and an immigrant woman, I love it when candidates know what they're worth and ask for their worth. I know when their candidates know exactly what's going to make them tick and what's not going to make them tick. This is not to say that if a candidate is not confident, that I won't like work with them to build that confidence up, right? Like I have had candidates where I'm like, listen, I'm going to treat you and give you the advice that I would give my friend. Here's what you need to do. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, go do this. This is going to be helpful. And they're like, thank you. Like, I really appreciate that. So I would say knowing what you want is not just helpful for me to help you, but it's also helpful for you, because it's going to help you realistically compare whether this opportunity is the right opportunity for you or not. Because if you don't know what you stand for, and if you don't know what your must-haves are, you are going to be swayed very easily and you're going to regret that decision. I have done that myself, where I didn't know what I wanted and I just took something and regretted that decision. So know exactly what you want, know exactly what's going to make you tick, and that should be good.
No, that's a great point, because I really don't think you can conduct a job search successfully until you know what you want. So one of your colleagues says, what Tejal is saying is another extension of how hiring and dating are very similar. Know what you want. That's great. I thought you were going to say, make sure that you meet the requirements, make sure you meet all of the basic and preferred requirements, but you're not saying that. I mean, that's important, right?
Yeah, I would say that, like, when we just had this conversation, and I've had this conversation literally with every team that I've been on. I'm like, whether a candidate meets requirements for one of my jobs or not is secondary to me onto whether the candidate is a good fit overall. Okay. So I look at candidate like as an overall, do they need like the overarching product management or software engineering role? Because if they do, then I have enough managers, I've worked with enough managers that I can convince them, that I can push for that. Meeting the requirements is necessary, but meeting every requirement, some managers really need one domain experience, other managers don't. And I would say, like, for me, the candidate meeting, they're a good candidate, but that's not the best candidate. I would say the best candidate is somebody that knows that what they're worth and knows what they want and all of that stuff. Like the requirements, some managers are amiable on my end, have been all of my career. So I look at this more as a consulting type role rather than like a order taker type role.
So essentially you're saying is that it's not your goal to place as many people as possible, but it's your goal to place the right people who are going to be happy in what they're doing. Is that correct?
Yep. I have literally had this conversation with my managers in the last 3-4 years where I'm like, I need you to be more picky. And when I say that, I mean that like not every candidate needs to go to an on-site because you're getting tired and you're wasting the candidate's time because you don't know what you want.
Wow. Okay.
It's not even about like you getting tired. It's about like you're like stringing these candidates along because you don't know what you want and you're wasting the candidate's time. Like I need you to figure out what you want, and then let's talk in like a week or so. I'm gonna give you a week and like let's rehash this conversation because I don't want to waste the candidate's time because they have 10 other opportunities they could be moving forward with. And I want to give them a good experience, and this is not a good experience.
Okay.
Thankfully, that does not happen at Amazon with me.
I have a ton of questions coming in from the audience, but I want to speed along so that we can stay within the hour because I know that you have that ceremony. If there's one misconception candidates have of the hiring process, what would it be?
Can I say this? Can I say this?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you going to swear again?
No. That a bot is rejecting your application. If you are a candidate that thinks that there is...
Okay, hold on a second. Let's okay, so a bot is another term for applicant tracking system.
No. So applicant tracking system, I want you guys to think about applicant tracking system as my my filing cabinet right here, but on a computer. That's what applicant tracking system is. I pull out a resume, I review it, move them forward, or send, like, give it to the hiring manager. What people misconstrue is that when they apply and they answer certain questions, do you have X number of experience? Can you work in the country without sponsorship, things like that? And they say they don't meet the if this then that logic. They get rejected and they get an email with the rejection. They think that because they did this, no human reviewed the resume. In that case, that is true. And that does happen, but the resume is still there. That if I wanted to review it, I can still review it.
Okay.
The other thing that I've seen is people think that there is a scanner. What most people think of as a bot is a scanner that goes through your resume, and if your resume does not have keywords, that it's going to automatically reject them. That is not a thing.
No.
If you are getting a rejection 5 minutes after you've applied, middle of the night, whatever the case may be,
Mhm.
likely a human being has reviewed your resume and has determined that you are not fitting what they're looking for.
Right.
And the other misconception is that recruiters reject all candidates. I will say that if you meet 70% of the requirement, your resume is in front of my hiring manager. And if
Mhm.
you're getting a rejection, it's likely my hiring manager said no. So we're not the gatekeepers. I am trying to fit as many candidates in and like trying to screen in rather than screen out candidates. And most good recruiters are like that. So a human, like don't think that the human being is not reviewing your resume, because likely if you're getting rejected, a human being is reviewing your resume. The only time that is not happening is they found the right candidate, and if they have all of these other applications that they're not going to review because the candidate has accepted the job.
Glad that you mentioned that, because there has been some, I would say, there has been some correction of that particular area, bots, ATS, and that I think now people who have seen the corrections on LinkedIn, I'm talking,
Yeah.
are better informed. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that. And,
Yeah.
you know, when I ask people if they know what an applicant tracking system is and what the whole process is, a lot of people don't know. So I think that's a really important thing for them to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what are your thoughts on ghosting?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
You hate it
I
in
don't.
terms of you're being ghosted yourself or ghosting others?
Both sides. Both sides. I have anxiety, y'all. So if I ghost somebody, I will wake up in the middle of the night and like be like, you didn't respond to that person. How dare you not respond to that person? And I'll like stay awake at night. So I hate it. I don't ghost. Have I ghosted in the past? Yes, it has happened. Have I accidentally missed reaching back out to candidates? Absolutely does happen. We're all humans. But I hate it when both sides ghost the other side.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
It
if
happens
you
on both sides.
it does. You know, I've done that as a candidate. I've done that as a recruiter. I hate it on both ends because it's anxiety inducing. It's nerve wracking. Like it's a thing, right?
Sure.
And my thing for both candidates and recruiters is the same thing. If you feel nervous about talking to the person on the phone and telling them you're not moving forward, send them an email. The least you can do after you've spoken to the candidate, or the least you can do after they've interviewed with you or you've interviewed with them, is say, hey, I'm no longer interested. The team is no longer interested. I'm sorry, it didn't work out this time. Email is the least we can do if we've spoken to somebody. I don't like ghosting. I think it's immoral and unethical to ghost a person.
But at what point does it become ghosting? Is it ghosting when a person applies for a job, sends in the application with a resume, and then there's no response? Is that ghosting, or is it ghosting after they've had contact with a recruiter or hiring manager? At what point does it become ghosting? Because in my opinion, it's not ghosting if a person applies for a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I would agree with you there. It's not ghosting if you've applied and you haven't heard anything. Is it bad? Yeah. Like, should you have gotten a rejection email? Yeah, absolutely. But again, this is where dating and job searching is similar, hiring is similar. When you swipe right on Tinder,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's used Tinder recently, but when you swipe right on Tinder and the other person doesn't swipe right, do you consider that ghosting? No, you swiped right, you were interested, they were not interested, you moved on.
Okay.
So that's how I look at it. It's not ghosting. Should they respond to you, to your application, and at least send you a rejection email? Absolutely. Is it possible that the rejection email is in your spam? Possibly, but that's not ghosting. It's when you have spoken to a member of the company, a team member of the company, that's when it becomes ghosting.
Have you ever been caught in the middle where you are getting, you're getting responses from candidates that they haven't heard, about a decision, when the decision is actually in the hiring manager's lap? Have you ever been in that situation?
Yeah, I think it happens. It has happened. When that happens and the hiring manager is taking too long, I just reach out to the candidate and say, hey, I'm waiting to hear back from the hiring manager. I haven't heard anything back. I'm going to reach out again today and I will let you know. And my thing has always been, if a hiring manager does not respond to me on a decision within 24 hours of when the decision was supposed to be made, I
Yeah.
ping them. I ping them. I tell them I threaten all of my managers. I have threatened all of my managers since 4 years ago. I'm like, if you don't
Yeah.
respond to me in 24 hours, I will keep pinging you every 24 hours until you respond to me.
Ooh.
Yeah, nobody wants to be my hiring manager.
Attitude. Okay, so I want to get to a question, and so I am applying for an operations management MBA graduate program at Amazon. Oops. The next step is taking an assessment. Can you explain this assessment and how much it counts in the interview process? Can you address that, or?
I don't know enough about university recruiting to educate in a informative manner. If I know enough, I'll say this: if they are asking you for an assessment for an MBA or like a graduate thing, that assessment and your grade on that is going to matter, but on whether they move you forward or not. So that is an important thing for you to take into consideration.
Okay, all right. So, so I mentioned earlier that you're very active on LinkedIn, and I really enjoy the information that you impart. So, you know, what messages are you trying to convey? Well, in essence, what is your mission on LinkedIn?
Oh, that's a great question. I think my mission has evolved over the years. I started with trying to pull the curtain a little bit back and see the wizard. Let's see what the wizard is doing behind the curtain kind of deal. I think at this point, it's more educational. Like, I just want to help job seekers and give them different ways of how a recruiter perceives their application, how a recruiter perceives their resume, their LinkedIn, things like that. And again, I think Ed will agree with me on this when I say this. Like, you ask 10 recruiters for an opinion, you will get 15 answers.
15, not just 10?
No, not just 10. No, you'll get 15 answers.
Okay.
So it's just creating more awareness of how the hiring process works and what recruiters look for and what actually happens on that end, because it is a very one-sided relationship. I know that, we all know that hiring and job search is a very one-sided relationship. And the thing I'm trying to convey is that, like, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't really have to be this like boss battle that you have to fight to beat the boss to get the job. It can be more human and it can be more relatable than that.
It could. It definitely could. I totally agree with you. Oh, you know, one question I wanted to ask is, what do you ever come across a job ad that is just written inaccurately? In other words, it doesn't at all describe the position you're trying to fill?
In any of my jobs over the years, what to think? No, I haven't done that, because I try to make sure that I sit down before I post a job. I sit down with the hiring manager to ensure that we are saying what we need to say in the job description that is posted externally. And that is to ensure that we only put out what we need to put out, and we don't put out like things that doesn't matter. Like, we don't need a rock star, we don't need a ninja. Like those things don't exist. So that's like the big thing for me. I have come across jobs as a job seeker that way, and a job seeker has shared those jobs with me. I am very much like a clear communication, get to the point kind of person when it comes to business stuff. And I'm like, if it doesn't matter and if it's not part of the job, we're not putting that on there.
Okay, so you do have a role in how the job ad is written then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
That's good. Okay. Because I feel that in some cases a job ad isn't a true reflection on the job itself. And that's where some of my customers get frustrated, because they're at an interview when they're applying for a job, a different job than what is actually presented. So
Yeah.
All
And
right.
it's okay to, if you speak to a recruiter before you go to a formal interview, ask the recruiter. It's like, what
Oh,
are
yeah.
the three main points that the team is looking for in this role? Totally okay to ask that question so you have more clear understanding of what you're interviewing for.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the next question is, you've written about candidates reaching out to recruiters, and this was for an article that you contributed to of mine. Excellent, thank you very much. What is the best way to do this, and what is the worst way?
Yeah, so the best way to do when you're reaching out to a recruiter is be specific. Be specific of the job that you are applying. Be specific on what role it is, job ID, why you're applying, and have your resume if you're applying to a certain job.
Okay.
Most recruiters will have jobs listed on their profile page with the hiring banner that will tell you what kind of positions they're recruiting for. So, and if you're reaching out to me for, like, say, a university role or a software engineer role, acknowledge the fact that I might not be recruiting for that and say, hey, can you pass this resume along to the right person?
Okay, good. Yeah.
Again, it's about clear communication of what you're trying to achieve by reaching out to me. The worst way to just reach out to me is saying, hi, can you find me a job? Hi, can you help me to find a job?
Right.
Can you tell me what kind of jobs there are that I might be qualified for? You're not taking ownership of your own job search. You need to take ownership of your own job search. As a recruiter, I get 50 messages a day with those subject lines or with those in the content. It's not helpful. I don't have time to respond. Most recruiters won't have time to respond. So the best way is going to be clear communication. If you are just sending your resume just to send your resume out, you're likely not going to see a lot of results and you're going to get frustrated. And my goal is to not get you frustrated.
So do you ever find out after the fact that for, the best candidate, as you've described, was a little hesitant or even afraid to reach out to you or other recruiters, when they should have? Have you ever come across that?
Yeah, I've hired people where they've been like, if you hadn't reached out to me multiple times, I probably would not have taken your job offer. If you hadn't chased me down, I probably would not have taken your job offer. I'm like,
Oh, so
really?
you
And
have
they're like,
yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah, like I really didn't want to look for a new job. And if you hadn't like chased me down, I wouldn't have. I'm like, oh, interesting. And like, that's like comes in, right? That the tenacity, the persistence comes in because sometimes people are happy and that's great. I want everyone to be happy in the roles that they are working in. And if you're happy, that's great. But if I can make you happier, that's even better.
Okay, so I know your answer to this one. How important are cover letters, really? Okay, it could be a very short answer.
Not important at all. I stand by my statement that in America, in corporate America, any job that requires a cover letter is a job not worth applying to.
Okay, I'm gonna silence you here. Okay, so next question is, what is one piece of advice you'd give career coaches?
One piece of advice I'd give career coaches. That's a great question.
Because you want career coaches to work in unison with you so that you receive the most well represented candidates as possible.
Yeah, I would say that make friends with recruiters. I think this is not true. Yeah, yep. This is not true for Bob, the circles we are in, but I've seen this over the years where career coaches and recruiters think that the other side is the enemy and we need to like beat down the other side. And I'm not of that mentality. I'm like, let's work in unison because we are helping the same person. Yep. So I always say I make friends with career coaches. I send candidates and job seekers to career coaches that I have trusted with my own resume. Like I have trusted many career coaches with my own resume and my own search. So I use career coaches and I love career coaches because they do an important part of the job that is to get a candidate the job. So I would say like make friends with recruiters if you are trying to help in a specific industry or a specific skill set or something like that. Like make friends with recruiters in that area so they can give you, because recruiters are happy to tell you how things work in that area, because then that would be helpful for you as a career coach to
Yes.
impart that knowledge onto the job seeker.
You know, I sort of had this question in mind because I came to this realization that, and I mentioned this at the very beginning, I don't know all there is to know about recruiting. You know, I probably have a very limited experience in recruiting. You know, I've been on the hiring side, but not a recruiter. So
Yeah.
I've come to the realization that I need to know more about what you all do. You know, before I really, you know, advise my clients as to what they should do. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And I'm also of the mentality, I know that there are other recruiters out there that believe that career coaches need to have recruiting experience. You don't, in my opinion, you don't need to have recruiting experience to be a good career coach. You're a great career coach. Kamara is a great career coach. I know so many great career coaches that don't have recruiting experience, but that do listen to recruiters to help their clients, right? So I think like that's where the more recently the discourse has been, like that career coaches need to have recruiting experience. They don't. Like I don't believe that they do. As long as you're giving accurate advice to your clients and not and giving information, I think like that's my 2 cents. That I don't believe all career coaches need to have recruiting experience.
Okay, so someone asked a related question is, if I'm working with a career coach, should I ask them to reach out to a recruiter or just be the one to do it and fill them in? Do you ever work in conjunction with career coaches on a regular basis?
There are career coaches that will reach out to recruiters on behalf of their clients. They do charge for that service. Whether you ask your career coach to reach out on your behalf or you reach out to the recruiter on your behalf, it's not going to make a difference in the response as long as you're qualified for the role or show how you're qualified for that role. I would always say that to me, whether the candidate comes Bob from you or whether the candidate comes directly to me, the candidate, if is qualified, I'm going to move them forward.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So anything else on that? Okay. So you also mentioned the bot belief. And so that's something that I know that recruiters want to make clear to job candidates and career coaches that that's not a thing. You know, there is some human intervention. And so, you know, I got that because I used to think that it was all an automated process. But now I no longer think that. So these are things that are good for us to know because, you know, how can we better advise people on how to write their resume and, you know, interviewing and so forth. I do have a question regarding interviewing. So what is your knockout question? What is the most difficult one that you ask?
I think this is difficult from a candidate perspective, and I'm trying to.
But let me preface by saying it's not that you mean to really, you know, I don't want to use the word, but them, but you know, what is the one that they find most difficult?
Yeah, that's what I was. I don't think this is difficult, but it's difficult from a job seeker's perspective because they don't know how to answer this. It's tell me about yourself. Most people get tripped up. They're like, the number one thing is we are not asking you to repeat your resume. We're not asking for any personal information. What I want to know is what is on in your career that you have done, and how, like, I just want to know about you as a professional and hear about what you think is important. Because your resume, I read your resume, I read your LinkedIn profile. If I've reached out to you, there's clearly a reason I did that. If I have specific questions, like it's just an ice-breaking question that I want to know what you are passionate about, what makes you excited about your role, like how did you get started, like anything you want to know, you want me to know about you that is related to your career. Don't tell me that you're married. Don't tell me you're single. Don't tell me how many kids you have. Don't tell me your religion or political affiliation, because candidates do that. And I purge that from my brain, but there are recruiters and hiring managers that won't, and it is a discriminatory thing and it's unfair, but don't give them that information. They don't need to know that. Create an elevator pitch, 30 to 60 second elevator pitch, and give them recruiter, hiring manager asks you that, give them that answer. And if they have specific questions, they'll ask you those questions.
So what, do you ever ask the weakness question?
No.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, because
Okay.
that is like the dumbest question.
I have been asked that question, and it is the dumbest question, because like most people will say a strength as a weakness, like being a perfectionist, or I'm too assertive, or like, try to portray. Nobody should be asking that question in 2022. It doesn't matter what your weakness is. Like, whether you're can you do the job? Are you qualified? That's what matters. Your weakness is it's fine. I don't care.
Okay, excellent.
Couldn't be asked.
So I do have one last question, and it is, what's next up for you, Tejal?
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, it
so
says more like, where do you plan to be in 5 years? No,
yeah.
But where are you going from here?
I think I'm going to continue creating content on LinkedIn. I'm working on redoing my website so I can start blogging there again. Part of that is also creating some more content for job seekers, other recruiters. I'm kind of revamping this as more, not just for job seekers, but like for the career and industry as a whole in recruiting.
Maybe a book? Are you thinking of a book?
Don't know yet. Maybe.
I can see that. I can see that. I really can.
Yeah.
God knows you have the energy, so I can see you doing that.
Oh my goodness. Maybe a book. I don't know. But yeah, I'm revamping my blog, and like personally, next month I'm taking a solo trip for the first time in my life post graduation.
Good. Excellent. A solo trip, you said?
Yeah. I've never done one of those.
Yeah, we have a friend who only does solo trips because she doesn't want to be held back from anyone. So she climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and she's just amazing. Tejal, I want to thank you so much for doing this. By the way, folks, my guest speakers don't get paid. I hope you realize this, right? But they do it out of the kindness of their heart. And so thank you so much. And thank you, Ed, for attending. I know that no one knows you. Well, no, I shouldn't say that, Ed. I bet people know you. But thank you so much, Tejal, because you're educating people about the job search, and this is very important.
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for the wonderful questions. It was a pleasure being here.
I know I didn't get to all of them, and some people are going to be angry, but I tried the best. So okay, so have fun at your ceremony.
Thank you.
Someone writes, excellent presentation. I agree. Okay, all right. Take care, hon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.